everybody, welcome to the 34th and best episode of the Hashcast. And as always, I have a guest way more interesting and way cooler than myself. And for the first time ever, I probably have a bigger smartass than myself today. My good friend, Steven Spohn. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. You literally say that to every guest, don't you? This is the best I've ever done.
No, well, I say it's the best episode ever. That's because I get better at this every episode.
No.
But
Okay.
the guests are equally awesome every week. But I would say that you're probably the biggest smartass. Like, you proved that in your first sentence out of your mouth on this show. So I appreciate it, Steven.
It's that Canadian you just bring it out in
I
it.
know. So how is superstar status working out for you? We just got off the Game Awards.
Yeah.
Mr. Super Famous. How are you enjoying your newfound fortune?
I mean, as you can see by the background, we've had a few additions done. The lighting is really solid. We use LEDs so the flames don't flicker.
Okay.
I know it seems weird, but that's actually by design.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. I also have my own fox in the background there.
Look at that. I'm a big a fox is my favorite animal. I'm glad that you brought that in just for me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He actually is my board member back there. Make sure I don't say anything wrong. We'll come over here and turn off the camera if I say the wrong thing.
The Elon Musk of the gaming industry, where everybody has
That's
to review your stuff before you go online. I appreciate it. Like, Steven, everybody knows who you are because you are famous. Like, you got to tell your story on the Game Awards. But let's be honest, if you really want to reach the hearts and the homes of the people, that's what you come on the Hashcast for. Because
of course.
Does my mom know who you are after the Game Awards? No, she does not. Will she know who you are after the Hashcast? Absolutely, she'll know you. So I don't want you to repeat the story all the time, but for just in case someone has never heard of you, who are you and what is it that you do?
Well, my name's Steven Spohn. I go by Steve, or Pain in the Butt, as what would call me. But my general position in life is to be a guiding source of inspiration for people for the right reasons. My day job is that I work with AbleGamers, the wonderful charity that helps people with disabilities be able to play video games. I'm the chief operations officer, and I get to help make people smile all day. So, life is pretty good for the most part.
It is pretty good, and I've had the absolute privilege of working with you in Toronto that one time. I don't know why they picked Toronto in January, I think it was, because it's probably the worst time.
Yeah, it worked out so well because they immediately got rid of that wing of their expo. They're like, all right, and we're done with it.
Yeah, oh well, that was too bad. But it was I got to see the smiles that you talk about, and it made an everlasting impression on me. I think I've talked about that on the show more than once. But you got finally, well, you've been rewarded probably before, but the Gamers Award Global Gaming Citizen. How did that happen? Or are you not allowed to talk about that at all? Does Jeff have his hounds on you?
Well, I mean, there's a golden robot in my closet that is marked "Don't worry." Okay. I'm not sure what that means. No, I'm not under any NDAs or anything. Okay, I was under an embargo before it came out. Couldn't tell anyone. Didn't tell Loot. Couldn't literally tell any of my friends. No. They were very secretive. They didn't want it to be known. They wanted it to be one of their big surprises. But it just came out of the tweet that Woot and probably many of your listeners had seen going out, 3-4 months ago, where I took a picture of myself with my prototype Xbox adaptive controller, and my cat jumped in the way, and I said, "Hey, internet, I'd really like to be recognized as somebody who's trying to do some good for the world," and it was amazing. Like 25,000 retweets later.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Woot probably has these. Woot probably has these statistics written down. It was like 75,000 interactions, something like that. One of the biggest voting things they've ever gotten for a non AAA game. So it was really an honor. I was happy, that it could come about simply because last year was kind of rough, and it was an honor to be a Trending Gamer nominee, but the circumstances that happened around that was just interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I'm still upset about last year, to be honest. But I also talked about that before. But now well, so what are you gonna do with this newfound reputation? How are you gonna ruin it? What is your milkshake duck approach for this year to
Well, I mean, if it goes by the trending gamer rules, I'll be found out to be a secret racist or
probably,
something tomorrow.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think that's why they chose the global gaming systems. They did. We all come from fairly good, heartwarming places. Each one of the citizens, and I gotta call it out too. Like, I'm not the only global gaming citizen that was nominated with two other people who are both fantastic. In their own rights and what they do, and together we represent the game industry trying to do what it should be doing best, and helping everyone be able to game.
Yeah, no, it was very nice to see, and I think Jeff really took it to heart last year when we made our salty comments, and I'm glad that that went out. But I was so happy to see that. To see the video, it was very well done. You got to tell your story again, but I want to dig in a little because that was like a 2-minute video, and we got a whole hour, so we got plenty of time. But
I want to tell it 14 times. Here we go.
Yeah. Well, I want a slightly spicier version, but just like where do you get the where did you get the energy to start this? Because it's so much work. I see how busy you are, because we tried to do the show in June, and we're December now.
Yeah. Right.
Like that. This is your living now, right? You make a living off of AbleGamers. Like, this is your job.
So I'm actually still a volunteer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm not a paid employee of AbleGamers. I'm a volunteer. A lot of that's to do with American governments, and when you're disabled, you have to be careful about what you do with your life. Okay. But Twitch right now is my paying job.
Okay.
But it's the great thing about doing the AbleGamers thing is it sounds super cheesy and corny, but it's not a job where I ever minded doing it without pay.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing this when I was, 15 years younger than I am now. And, earning money out of it was never a thought.
Oh.
I get some free video games, and I get to make people smile, and that's worth 40 hours of my time every week, so.
Yeah, no, that is true. How's the Twitch streaming going? Are you, like, raking in millions of views yet? Because you should be.
Yeah, again, the background, you can see, it's amazing. Well, I don't have a Red Bull inspired room like certain athletic people do.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, it is great to have this community I've formed over the last year. I'm up to almost 5,500 followers inside of a year. That's by Twitch statistics. That's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah. I was very lucky that I have streamers who have been doing this for years that were in my corner. I had contacts around the industry that cared about me trying to get out there and do this. For better or worse, my buddy Craig Kaufman, talked me into doing this. Yeah. My other buddy Panda, she also had a big hand in this. And between the two of them, they just really convinced me that Twitch would be a nice place. Yeah. And I was super scared, right? I was scared that I was going to go on there and there was going to be a ton of people that are like, haha, disabled guy, and like make fun of me and my appearance. And I was like, listen, I can take that in my everyday life, but I don't need people coming into my house and doing that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, man, I haven't even really talked about it on the record yet. It's been pretty interesting to me. Sure, there's been some people that will make comments about your appearance or, your disability or, how you're this or that. But I'd say just maybe less than 1%, maybe 2% at most of all my experiences with people.
That's not bad at all.
Nothing like I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So. Well,
all things considered.
You know what? You're gonna have people
that
are just, toxic. Something has happened in their life. It made them not see the light the way that we want everybody to. You and I spend our entire lives trying to elevate others, and not everybody's like that. No. So
No, but that makes us keeps us in a job in a way. Spreading the love. But you had, like you mentioned before, like you have the support of a lot of people in this industry. How did you get to have those connections? Because I've known you for a while, but how do you expand your brand? Because I knew you before I knew about AbleGamers. I think you have maybe a bigger following than AbleGamers. Like how much thought do you put into this personal branding of Steven Spohn and AbleGamers? Because I know there's a lot of your flavor behind all of this.
The flavor of Spawn. Yeah. So I mean, I think as of 4 years ago when we met, it was probably true that that I flexed a lot of my own personal muscle to get the attention of AbleGamers. Now AbleGamers is international and way more popular and being followed than I am, with double the Twitter following and NBC coverage that I wasn't even in because I wanted other people to get spotlight for a minute who wasn't me. Really. I mean because we have a lot of people at AbleGamers who put in a lot of hours and a lot of work. And their work is more important than mine in a lot of ways. I'm just out there trying to raise awareness. I think the one thing about my personal brand is that I'm trying to find that line between using inspiration as a guiding light and using the inspiration by people who think I am Jesus because I got up in the morning. Especially in the disability community with, inspiration porn is a quotable term that has been around forever. It's unfortunate, but there are people in the world who use a picture of somebody who is disabled visibly and sad, and they will slap a positive phrase on it, and then they'll get 50,000 retweets, and they're okay with it. And I'm not. No. So... my life is right now just all about finding the right way to pin that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I to be honest, that's something I also had to learn because it's so ingrained in people to say, "Oh, you're so brave," and how it's such an inspiration to see that he's doing everything that everybody else is doing. Basically, like you said, like get up in the morning is not a super special feature for anybody, and getting to know you a little bit better and getting exposed to that really changed my views on a lot of things, or not just views, more habits, I think. So it's interesting to hear you say that again on the record. Of course, like I said, knowing you has made that clear already. Because even when we were doing things together, I would say something, and you were like, "Yeah, actually, that's a bunch of shit you're saying right now." Like, oh yeah, thank you for that again, Steven.
Hey, but anything I'm not gonna embarrass you in public is a good day.
Oh, yeah,
so,
that is true. And I know you always jump on the occasion to make that work.
Listen, that's what friends are for.
That's true. That's why we are. That's why we're friends. But how do you it must be an interesting line to walk every now and then. Like you said, you want to be an inspiration, sure. Role model. I know a lot of people when I talk about you, they say, "Oh, he's an inspiration to me." How do you still make that work? Because I think there's opportunity there, even though you're like, ugh, the whole inspiration thing again. How does that keep you busy?
It's sort of a privilege of the place that AbleGamers is in now. AbleGamers has been this boulder that I've been pushing up a hill where the entire industry wasn't sold on accessibility, and not everyone cared about or wanted to think about accessibility. And Mark Barley and I have been shoving this boulder up this hill, and then we got people like Craig Kaufman and Jesse Haw, and we have this continued gathering of good people that are pushing this, and it's no longer just me and another dude pushing this boulder up the hill. There's solid, great people behind us, and it's allowed me to ease back a little bit on how much effort I have to spend. I don't have to. There was a time in AbleGamers' career where Craig Kaufman and I would burn 16-hour days, 6 days a week because there's no traction was being made, and we had to make something happen. We had to make people care. Now it's not that way. So I realize that's kind of answering your question in a roundabout way, but the truth is, once the industry started to care, I really felt two things happen. Number one, I was able to sort of take the foot off of the gas on how much effort I had to put into AbleGamers. Yeah. I felt like I could put in a healthy amount of effort because honestly, I was putting in a very unhealthy amount. As much as you love anything in life, if you put your all into it to the point where you are burning out, you're no good to anybody. No. So, and two, I sort of saw that as an opportunity. Yeah. It's the industry cares about accessibility now. They care about stories like mine. Yeah. I don't need to live in the shadows anymore. I don't need to, fight to be like, no, I'm completely 100% quote unquote normal. There's nothing weird about the way I have to play games. Haha. Yeah. I don't have to do that anymore. Yeah. Now I can be like, yeah, I play video games with a hat on my head. Yeah. So what?
It's a good looking hat too.
Thanks. Yeah. It's Rocket Raccoon. Yeah, so.
There you go. Can't go wrong with Rocket.
That's right.
I think this year, or maybe it's because I paid more attention to it, or maybe I started noticing, it felt like a huge swing. Like we had the special controller from Xbox, but all of a sudden I see guys in the credits of AAA video games. And then of course I see you every now and then perk up when somebody's like, this should be the new baseline for accessibility options. And you're like, well, actually no, this is the bare minimum. But the controller was a huge thing. I think that was one of the biggest visual things that I noticed, and I think most people noticed. How long have you been guys been working on that? Because it seemed like a huge project.
I joked about the golden robot earlier, but really, if anybody's got a hidden golden robot in my house, it's probably Microsoft. Yeah. It was almost 3 years where we were in on this project and unable to say anything. And, even back then, back when we were doing our thing in Toronto, and I mentioned to you, hey, there's cool things on the horizon, but, they're not anything anybody would believe. No. That's one of the things I was talking about, because...
Such a sneaky bastard. Yeah.
I know, right? So you had known about it for years. Well, yeah, it's no one would have ever believed that it would come from such a big publisher. Yeah. But it was great. I got to work with the team at Microsoft and Xbox, and they're really great. And I think it's a great first step. I think that there's a lot of room to improve.
Yeah.
The marketing behind it, I think that they are dropping the ball a little bit. Some of their marketing really makes it seem like any disability is magically cured by this one device, and that's just not true. There has to be a stable of devices out there because there's a stable of platforms, right? So I think as long as we keep in mind that this is great for raising awareness, and that people continue to see it as cool. Now everybody is included in this, whether you are, a woman or a man or a girl or a boy, or you are, LGBT, or you are disabled, or you are any race, creed, background, you can be a gamer. Yeah. And it wasn't like that when I started. No. Even the demographics now, the ESA says more young women are playing video games than young boys. It's amazing the way our industry is changing, and I hope that this is a sign that Microsoft's trying to keep up with the times.
Yeah. No, I thought it was fantastic. I want to hear your reaction to that. I'm not sure how this worked. Maybe I'm not sure how aggressively you approached them, or that you just got a call one day and they said like, hey, we're going to do this, we need your help. But when that project started, like, it must have been such a pick-me-up. To finally see all your hard work paid off. Like, how did you feel when you got your first day in on that project?
It was fun. It was everything you'd imagine working your first day at a major developer would be. We still had to do all of our work at AbleGamers. That couldn't stop. Yeah. Bryce, who was one of the main leads on the project, just reached out to me through Twitter and said, hey, I got this cool thing. I'll have to NDA you to bring you in, but I think you could do some good magic here. And we brought in Craig Kaufman, and we, started going to work, coming into secret meetings where and this is my favorite story to tell.
Yeah.
So, there was a time where we were in on these meetings, and Microsoft's legal department had not yet fully approved us to be in on the Xbox team.
Yeah.
So their legal department would not let anyone from AbleGamers see what this prototype looked like. So they got around that by drawing it on a napkin.
Yeah.
Because there was no rules against us seeing what it looked like if it was not the actual unit itself.
Okay.
So they were literally drawing it. It was the greatest thing.
That is funny.
Oh man, I'm sure somebody gets yelled at every time I tell that story at legal at Microsoft.
I'm sure Phil Spencer listening to this saying, "What, Steven? No."
Exactly. Yeah. No, but it was great. You know, how the TLDR is basically AbleGamers had a controller out there called the Adroit. You saw it when we worked in Toronto, and it was just a device that had a bunch of plugins for switches, and we could make it work just like the XAC does now. And at the same time, unbeknownst to us, a different organization was helping to figure out how such a device like ours could exist, because they didn't know ours could exist. We don't have the marketing budget that Microsoft has.
Not yet.
So they came up with something that was not even really close to this. It was sort of a dream of just having switches be able to push buttons. Bryce brought us in because we already did something very similar. And today we have the spiritual successor to the Droid called the XAC.
Yeah.
You know? And now it's out in the world, and anybody can pick it up at a Microsoft store.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm not plugging that. Like I'm not being. I know, right? I'm not getting a kickback from Microsoft for saying it.
Me neither, unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I just think it's cool.
Yeah.
Because you can't buy the controllers that I can offer somebody who comes to us at Walmart. No. It just doesn't exist. No. But this does.
Yeah. So that's very that's fantastic with Microsoft. It's just the first step, right, for you guys. I mean, this needs to be everywhere, basically. So what is your next push for AbleGamers? Because you can't just write out these successes, right? 2019 is right around the corner. Right. How are you going to take this to the next level at this point?
For professionally and AbleGamers wise, it is a matter of continuing to push developers to make new controllers for different systems. The Nintendo platform is still extremely hard to get into. We have found ways that you can use adapters to do Switch things, but they're still not great. No. So something needs to be done. Yeah. And we're just going to keep developing new cool things. We just got a patent on a new device that we haven't even revealed yet. 2 or 3 days ago. So it's really cool.
On the Hashcast, I like it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll be talking about that on AbleGamers and Twitter soon. And we hope these things continue to help more and more people. But they all come from real experiences. Yeah. That's the thing about the Xbox. XAC was a dream by able-bodied people to help disabled people, and then they brought disabled people in afterwards. Our devices are all ideas that come from disabled people to solve situations that they're in or they experience. So
like you said, it's a good start. Are you getting more traction with Nintendo? You said it's hard to get in, but I know there's also some frustration there when it comes to features and options. But now that you're best friends with Jeff Keighley, maybe he can just call Reggie for you and say, like, look, you gotta talk to this guy because you guys need to get shit together.
Yeah, I am even on record because I live streamed the awards. My chat did not know that I was getting an award, so they were freaking out whenever my face popped up there. But Reggie comes up on the screen. I'm like, hey, I fight that guy all the time. So I don't think me and Reggie are going to be going after crab legs anytime soon. But I think Reggie's wrong about a lot of things with accessibility. He really didn't show any interest in the XAC. He really, other than a few blanket comments, he hasn't stepped in and been like, AbleGamers needs to work with us more. So, I don't think it's a priority for him, and my job is to continue to nicely apply pressure until eventually they decide they want to make an XAC.
Yeah. It's one of the things that still blows my mind. Like, it's such an easy win for Nintendo to just give you guys a call and put it out there saying, hey, we're going to do this because we're going to help everybody. They choose not to. I don't. Well, like you have this conversation in your head probably every single day.
Every day.
But
I mean, the real thing that'll blow your mind and everyone listening is Nintendo, believe it or not, was actually the first company to put out a controller for people with disabilities. In the late 1980s, they put out a device that looked very medieval, where it was just a iron bar hooked around a white piece of plastic with a joystick that somebody could push with their chin.
Okay.
And all that was just like an early version of something you would use with your mouth to play video games. There's huge little red buttons you could push with almost, any configuration.
Yeah.
And for the time in the 80s, that was super advanced stuff. Like, holy crap, putting a horseshoe harness around somebody? Wow. And then it disappeared, and then they haven't touched the accessibility since.
Yeah. It's so weird. Well, but back in the day, you only had 2 buttons, so maybe it was easier for them.
Yeah.
Is that something? This is something I wonder about when I can't sleep at night. Like, with technology advancing, like, how frustrating is that for you or a company like AbleGamers, where you just get the stuff figured out, and then Sony and Xbox going to say, we're going to put a touchscreen on the button now that's actually going to have functionality in games, and then are you like, we just had the 12 buttons figured out? Like, is that a constant struggle, or do you think if you keep working closer with these companies that you can anticipate that a little quicker?
I think as a disabled person, it's much more frustrating to have to constantly keep up with technology in general. I'd like to think that organizations like AbleGamers and AbleGamers ourselves will stay with the curve, but it's hard. It's no secret around our industry that rumors are beginning to buzz that the next generation, Gen 5, is coming soon. Within the next 18 months, we'll probably start seeing leaks. And, who knows? Could be 2019, Christmas 2020. Who knows? But it's soon. We all know that. And it's going to be what some people are saying it's the last generation. Some people are saying it's just the one of many.
It's always the last generation. Every time.
Right. Yeah. So, it's just frustrating. It's one of my very first articles I did long ago. I was quoted as saying that the more things become accessible, the less accessible they become.
Yeah.
And you have your Vita, if you still have that piece of crap. Sorry, Greg Miller.
I love my Vita too. I'm on with Greg on this one.
Well, you and Greg are the only 2 people in the world that like their Vitas. The Switch, your Game Boy. I don't know what kind of things you have in Canada. So
we're still on the Game Boy. You're absolutely right.
On the Game Boy, yeah. Next year you're gonna get the Game Boy Color. Congratulations.
North of the wall.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it becomes more accessible to everybody in general. But as far as just being able to play on it, sometimes it just becomes more and more difficult. So, it's frustrating, but it's people with disabilities are living lives meant for an able-bodied world, and that's just the way it is. That's not going to change.
No, it's there's something that came up. I always have a question from patrons, and it kind of fits in here because we're looking at like the revival or like the final coming up of VR. Like how do you and how does AbleGamers look at VR technology right now, and what would you say if you could get like all VR devs in one room for an hour, and how would you steer the technology that way to make that super function? Because it sounds like there's so many options you have with that, but it's still very focused on hand controls as well, right? With the 16 knuckle controllers and whatever. Do you think there's a future there for AbleGamers to get on board with that? Unless it's the secret thing you talked about earlier. But...
It's not the secret thing, not this time. My coworker at AbleGamers, Jessie Haas, she does entire talks about virtual reality and accessibility and how difficult it is. And, she could talk about this subject for 3 hours. My boiler point, both as somebody who works at AbleGamers, but also just a gamer in general, is that VR is still not ready. It's still not prime time. We still don't have the holodeck. And we all want to think we do. But we don't. And, we continue to celebrate these games like Beat Saber where, you're just swinging a virtual wand in the air, but you got to be super able-bodied to do that. Even people I know who are able-bodied still have dexterity problems doing that game.
Yeah.
I have a friend who is completely able-bodied, tells me all the time, I can't play this, Steve, because I can't swing my arms that fast. I just can't. And it's unfortunate, but I hate saying this too much out loud because then I'll have a bunch of angry people at me. But I don't think VR is ever going to take off like they think it will.
Yeah.
I don't think virtual reality will. I think augmented reality is what's going to hit.
Yeah.
I think it's all around us. I think it's going to continue to increase. Yeah. I think Ghost in the Shell kind of things where you see the virtual billboards that are sticking out 3D and stuff like that. I think that's the world we're going to live in the next 20 years.
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting. I don't know. Like, every time I try VR, I love it. I think it's great, but I don't use it for games often. I use it to go see Disney World and stuff like that. But that's what I thought would be interesting in VR to go places where I couldn't go regularly. But then the controls always make it super complicated. So they just are any of the big three? Is it 3 or maybe 2, the Vive and Oculus? Yeah. Do they ever consider these kind of technologies for with AbleGamers or in general? Do they reach out saying, "Hey, we're trying to do this, but do you have any insight on this?" Or do you reach out to those guys?
We've had lots of opportunities where we can start having those conversations, and so far they just don't get anywhere positive. It always ends up with, well, we need a way to control it, and so we have to have the wands. And I don't think you do. I think people were saying that about controllers. I think that's the same excuse that kept accessibility away from a controller forever. Well, it's a controller. How do you alter it so that you don't have to put your hand on it? Well, now we have a good 20 ways to do that. So
I mean, eye tracking is like perfect for VR.
Right. Right.
Like
eye tracking, mouth movement, face movement, it's all there. So we'll just have to wait and see where it goes.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, well, here live on the it's not really live, but on the Hashcast, VR isn't going anywhere. Like, I'll quote you on that, Steven. See if we get angry VR people coming after you. Probably. Well, maybe Steven Blomkamp, like he's the Battle of the Stevens. That would be a great one. But
it's just not. It's just a strange technology. I think we just wanted to push it faster than it was ready to be pushed. That's the way I read VR right now. Is I think we all just wanted the today's graphics.
Yeah.
And we're still in the Nintendo NES era of VR.
Yeah. Oh, we'll see. Maybe 20 years from now. I can't even imagine where we're going to be when it comes to this kind of technology, video game technology in general, 20 years from now. But I just always love picking your brain about this stuff. But there's other stuff, because you're not just, like we said, you're not just AbleGamers, you're not just this... It's not all of you are. That's what I'm trying to say. Because there's more important things to discuss. Because you are one of my best allies when it comes to fighting Team Cap. So I want to know where does your love for Ironman come from? Because we're on the same team here, Team Ironman, #forever.
That's fair.
So, like, heroes in general. Like, how did you get interested in that genre? Because I know you're a fan.
I am. It's interesting because if I had $1 for every time I got into a discussion about superheroes and they said, "Oh, you must love Professor X," and I'm like, "All right, I'm done."
Yeah.
Because people think, "Oh, wheelchair, done." No. Actually, quite the opposite. I like Tony Stark and I like Captain America because Captain America way less because I think they represent two different things. Yeah. I like Captain America in the sense that he fights for justice and blah blah blah. That's great, but we're not goody two shoes. Most of us are not people who won't say the word darn, and we all have pasts. Yeah. We all have demons. Yeah. That's what I like about Stark. Stark's demons are out there and they're visible and proud, and they control him, and I think that's a lot of the way that all of us are too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us live with our demons, and you don't defeat them, you just learn how to work with them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's real, and I always like when you pipe up when I do my spiel on the internet. Um, but how long have you been like reading and been into the geek? I hate the word geek because it's so mainstream nowadays. Like, we are no
The
longer the
geekdom, yeah.
geekdom. We are just people who enjoy cool stories, I think. Where did this all start for you? Was it like right from the beginning? Because I have never read comic books like at all. Like, all my comic book knowledge comes from the movies. Did you read, or is it all movies for you? Like, how did you get into the world of superheroes?
Mine was Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, Fabulous X-Men and whatnot.
That was
you
the
know.
best, the X-Men.
It was.
You know, you can
It
still
really
hear the
was.
theme song in your head right now.
I can. It's ridiculous. I hope you play it behind us as we're talking.
Yeah, then I'll probably get ripped off YouTube, right? It went into
Probably, yeah. No, but it was great, and I loved Gambit back then. Gambit was the best. My best friend in the world when I was growing up, loved Wolverine. I was never a Wolverine guy, but you know, I liked. There's definitely a running thread of between Gambit and Ant-Man and Iron Man. I really like characters that are just average people who are sassy and flawed and yeah, right? I know, weird. So yeah, I think it's just so much more true to life. You know, I always think about Jack Reacher. I don't know if you ever saw the movie or if you ever read the books.
I saw a Jack Reacher movie, and I think it was the
Oh,
last
there
one,
you
and it was the worst.
Yeah, they did not do that justice,
No.
but the books are great.
Yeah.
I love the books simply because it's written by a guy who wants to do heroes as they really are.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting because every time dude gets into a fight, it's literally half a paragraph on the page.
Yeah.
It's no long drawn out huge thing. It's like, oh, and Jack takes a step forward, slams guy into his head into the car, and then grabs the other guy and kicks him in the leg, and then they're done.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's no like giant villain with
no buildings
doing a
being
monologue.
dropped. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No anvils. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I've always liked that kind of stuff just because I think it kind of represents the best of us in a real weird way.
Yeah. Is there, like, I know you're a big writer. I know you wrote a book.
Yep.
Where does that fascination come from?
I have no earthly idea.
No.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Yeah. That's the show. Thank you so much, Steve.
No. You know, I honestly don't know. When I was in senior year of high school, I skipped my first 28 of 29 English classes. The literal legal amount you can skip in America and not fail because I hate English. Yeah. And I've actually got an article up on my website talking about why I hated English. And you know, what's interesting to me is I'm super good at math. You know, and they always tell you in school, like, you know, go towards what you're good at.
Yeah.
Well, but the weird thing is, I had found that I had always been a storyteller.
Yeah.
When I was in elementary school, I went to a school for special needs because if you're disabled, that's automatically where you get put because of course you do.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until third grade that they got me out of there and put me in the mainstream high school type line of succession. So before I went on, I was at a special needs school, and those classrooms are much different than the ones that you have in mainstream school. They're sort of more like a circled wagon. Like, you have 40 kids in a classroom, and the teacher divides up their time, and you only stay in that classroom. You don't transfer classes. You don't have other classes. You do everything right there. And so it gives you a really close atmosphere for people. And I found that I wanted a baby brother so bad that I actually made up a story that my mom had gotten pregnant and was going to have a baby brother. And I had the entire class convinced that I was having this baby brother soon. And it wasn't until the principal of the school caught wind of this because I had convinced the entire class, and they were then telling their parents, and they were all convinced. It wasn't until they started asking me how it happened, and I started professing it was because she ate vegetables. She ate enough vegetables that she had a baby brother coming out for me soon. And I didn't even know where from. I thought they just magically appeared, and that was just it. But I realized, I had always been a storyteller. I liked telling stories. And I think the problem is we tend to tell people that you need a certain skill set to do
Hmm.
something. Like you need to be good at English.
Yeah.
I suck at spelling.
Yeah.
I am the most horrible speller you'll ever meet,
Yeah.
but I can tell you where to put a comma.
Yeah.
So, I think we just try to fit people into labels too
Hmm.
much. I don't say I'm a writer. I say I'm a storyteller because whether I'm telling a fictional story like that book,
Hmm.
or I'm telling a real story like my happenings with Gamers, they're just
Yeah.
stories. And that's what I really want to do when I grow up.
Yeah. When you grow up. So,
Yep.
if you would write a superhero, Steven, what would be your superhero? Like, what would you introduce into the universe?
Wow, a question actually nobody's ever asked me.
No?
Good for you.
Haha! Another scoop on the Hashcast there.
Wow, if I had to come up with my own hero, it would probably be someone that would work much like the A-Team,
Hmm.
and you rove from town to town and you solve people's problems, but their power would be being able to go back in time and help fix things that somebody messed up in the
Hmm.
past. And then by the end of the episode, they would learn that the path that they were on was right all along and they didn't need to change anything.
It's kind of like Quantum Leap, but with a more linear time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, because
I love that show, by
I,
the way.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it was too bad it got ended in its prime, but it
yeah.
was good.
I'm always nervous when I say that I loved something from the '80s, because then sometimes you watch it back and it's like super problematic. But I think,
Yeah,
yeah. But I think,
I don't remember problematic quantum leap things, but I'm sure they were there somewhere. I just didn't see them.
yeah, yeah. You never know.
I
You
can't,
never know.
I can't remember Sam ever smacking anybody around, so it's
That,
probably all right.
no, I remember an episode where he beat up a bunch of bikers. But I'm sure there was an episode where he was a woman and they just like made that super.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
no
didn't
doubt
even think
about it.
about that.
No
Yeah,
doubt about it.
yeah. Well,
Oh well.
maybe
Yeah,
I'd love to ask someone who is transgender if they saw problems with her, if they did it
yeah, that
justice.
would
It'd
be
be
a good
interesting
question.
to find out.
Yeah, that would be a good
Yeah,
question. I had Sabriel Maston
yeah.
yesterday, and we did not talk about Quantum Leap, but
That's see
see, always a problem. Always the good questions come up the next day.
the good
Yeah,
questions. Oh,
yeah.
darn it,
Yeah, but
missed opportunity.
that's great. So yeah, but I was curious to hear what kind of superhero
Yeah.
you would put in the world, because I would not even know where to start. I would probably make a mix of everything I like. It's like he's
Hmm.
got claws and he can turn cards into bombs, but he also shoots firework from his hands, and it's basically Captain Marvel. Because Rogue was my
You know,
favorite.
Rogue is pretty great.
Yeah.
Actually, where Stanley got a lot of his inspiration was he saw problems in the real world that he wanted to figure out how to solve,
Oh yeah.
and that was what he would do.
Hmm. I want.
That's the origin of Spider-Man. The reason he wears a hood is because he wanted kids to be able to imagine that they were Spider-Man no matter who they were.
Yeah, I heard that story. I heard that story. It is.
True,
Yeah.
actual true story, not an internet story like most of the ones
Yeah.
we know. But
Yeah, I wonder where the superpowers came from. Like maybe he couldn't reach something, and it was like, oh, if I could just walk up this building from the side, it would be so much more
if I
convenient.
could just will that over here, it'd be great.
That would
Just
be
like a
great.
walk on the wall.
Yeah, that would be great. But
My guess he probably saw a spider. He was like, "Oh, I need to. Oh no, I can't kill that. That's a living creature."
yeah, you
What if
can't
I
have
made it?
that. You can't have that. I'm very excited about Into the Spider Verse. Are you gonna go watch that movie?
Yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah.
I wasn't super excited about the 2004 2005 Spider-Man
No.
type thing, so I'll be interested to see it on the big screen, see what they did with that.
Yeah. It looks interesting, but we'll see. I'm gonna go see it next week, I think. But
Wow.
superhero. I can talk about superheroes forever, especially with you, because you're on my side instead of
Yeah,
those dirty
yeah.
tin cap hippies
Yeah.
on the internet that we fight with all the time.
Hashtag worst cat.
That's true. But so you have done so many things, Steven. Do
Yeah.
you ever feel like, okay, I want to do this next, or is there anything else for you that you would love to do but haven't done yet?
You kind of lightly touched on it earlier, except you asked about AbleGamers when you
Yeah,
were saying what's next.
yeah, but it's for
The
you.
weird thing is, yeah, the weird thing is for me, I really was my brain works a little differently than most, in probably not a good way. I had a pizza
Yeah,
this weekend,
yeah,
and I had a cherry Pepsi,
yeah,
and that was my celebration.
yeah,
Like I'm actually really bad at celebrating my own
yeah,
victories. The fact that I put out like 10 tweets about this thing is probably the most self-promotion I've done all year. Um, I don't really believe in celebrating my victories because whenever I achieve something,
Mm-hmm.
I'm already thinking about what's next.
Yeah.
So I'm already like, all right, well, I just won a title from the Game Awards, and that's not going to happen for another 12 years at least. So, but I am going to shoot again for I want that Lifetime Achievement Award, or the Icon Award, as they called it. I was like, I will get that award one day.
They'll make it happen. They'll make it happen.
But my immediate thought is, what's next? What am I going to shoot for? What am I? Is Ellen finally going to return my calls? Am I going to be able to, take this?
Probably if she can get Nugget Guy on her show, she should have you on your show. Let's be honest.
I mean, I've actually started with the Hashcat because Woot and I are friends, but I am trying to do more personal appearances this year and talk more about my next steps as opposed to AbleGamers steps, because for the last 15 years, my identity has been AbleGamers. And now I've sort of got to figure it out. What does my world look like in a world that people recognize both my work and AbleGamers work?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, so, I kind of got that feeling as we were talking. I was like, Steve is going to move on at some point. Like, you're always going to be involved probably, but like, it's time for Steve Spohn to be Steve Spohn and not always be connected, because that's what when I was trying to put this show together, I was like, I don't want to just talk about AbleGamers because you probably do that all the time. Like, I want to talk about more like, what are you gonna do? Like, like what?
Yeah, I don't. I wish I knew the exact answer to that question. I know that I want to figure this motivation thing out. There's so brief story. There's a lovely woman who has passed on, named Stella Young.
Yeah,
Stella Young. Who, those of you who may not be familiar, it sounds like you might know who I'm talking about. She did a lovely TED Talk called "I Am Not Your Inspiration." And she was profoundly disabled, in a wheelchair. She had some type of dwarfism, some type of brittle bone disorder. So she was very profoundly visibly disabled.
Yeah.
And she hated how people would say, "You inspire me," and she'd ask why, and they'd be like, "I don't know, you just do." And she hated that. Yeah. And she hated when people would inspire her just because she was alive. Yeah. And she did an entire TED Talk about it. Yeah. And I heard that TED Talk, and I loved the representation she had because I believe in what she's saying, but I also hated the speech. I hated that talk. Yeah. And I hated how able-bodied people latched onto it and really, sort of took it for their own rights too. Yeah. I think there's a balance. And I think my next mission in life is to continue helping AbleGamers as much as I can, because I will always bleed orange. But I also want to do my own motivating in my own way. And I want to figure out a way to do that where I can show people that you can do things in the world differently. Because there's a lot of people out there thinking about, your Jay Shettys and your Tony Robbins, who are completely able-bodied, usually guys who are straight, and they none of the minority checkboxes at all. None. No. They're usually your typical person that has this kind of power. Yeah. And they talk about how hard things are. Yeah. For your average person. And I think I fit that bill a little bit more. I have transgender friends. I have gay and lesbian friends. I have, bi friends. I have friends of every race. And I feel like being a disabled guy, I have a different point of view than most of them don't. Trying to be the best ally I can to every single minority that I can ever think of has sort of made me see the world a little bit differently. Yeah. Sometimes that gets me into trouble on Twitter because people don't always like hearing that. No.
I always appreciate it. Like I said earlier, I always appreciate when you call me out on my shit, because sometimes you just don't know you're talking out of your ass, right? As a able-bodied person, you just do not give it any thought because you've never been told, actually. Yeah. So that's it. Have you ever considered doing comedy? Because I would love to see you do comedy.
I have never thought about doing comedy. I actually don't even view myself as a very funny person. I think that's one of my weakest skills.
Really? I think you have such a good deadpan delivery. Like, I can just see you tell stories with your typical smart-assness jokes in between. Because you say you're not funny, but you always got something to say. You like I see you comment on everybody. Like I would love to see just a Steven special on that. I don't know. Just putting the seed in your head. Maybe you never know.
Hey, I mean, I appreciate the compliment. Yeah, reach out to your highest contacts that do comedy and tell them they need to train me.
Well, I'm gonna have Brock Wilbur on the show at the end of the month, and he's a comedian. Maybe he can get in touch. Like that's
if he's
my
looking
job.
for a Padawan.
Yeah, that's right. I make the connections between all my guests and make magic happen.
There you go.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. But I'm like, I think it's nice that you are trying to figure it out. I think it's sad that you don't know how to celebrate it, although pizza and cherry Pepsi sounds amazing right now.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't bad. It was good cherry Pepsi,
Yeah.
chicken pizza. I don't know what your favorite pizza is, but mine's white
I'm
pizza
gonna go
with
on the
chicken
record.
on it.
This is not true at all.
Yeah.
But pineapple on pizza is amazing. Like there, Steve just logged out, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry.
All right, take care, everybody. Bye.
No, but it's like sometimes it's hard to celebrate success because you always want to walk the line between bragging and being proud of yourself. But you have achieved so much. Like if you would stop doing what you've been doing right now, I would not be able to catch up to all the good you have put in the world. So like there's definitely reason for you to celebrate your success. But I'm also kind of happy to hear that you're gonna like celebrate Steven a little more, hopefully, in the past. Because dude, you're an amazing individual, a bit of a smartass, but I like you anyway. So it's good. So I
mean that goes back to the Tony Stark thing and why I respect that character so much, because that is Tony.
Yeah.
Tony messes up a lot and willfully so.
Yeah.
But he always does it trying to think that he's doing the right thing, and that to me is who I am.
Yeah.
And I always try to put my best foot forward, or my best wheel, as the case may be.
Yeah, do you still have the Ironman colors on your chair?
I do. Yeah. Of course I do.
Of course, that's the spirit.
There's literally an Ironman helmet to my left. Yeah. My second monitor is Ironman.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a good thing I don't use Ironman as any passwords on my bank accounts, because they would be cracked right now.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. You got your own jars going on there.
That's right.
Yeah, that'd be great. So
I was gonna say, I think it's great. I think actually watching friends like you are really what inspires me to keep being better. A long time ago, someone told me that you are the sum of the closest 7 people to you. So I always try to make sure I keep good people around me, just like yourself. Yeah. I think there's a time and place to be a smartass, but there's also, you keep people who are ambitious. Mm-hmm. Like anybody who knows you as a Patreon subscriber of yours know that you are nothing if not ambitious. You're always chasing the Twitter virals. You're always chasing the next thing. Yeah. You want to be somebody in this industry, and you are working on it. Yeah. You're not just like sitting there going, I wish I was somebody in this industry. You're actually making it happen.
You gotta make it happen. Yeah, it must be annoying sometimes to always have to chase on your timeline. But I
don't think so. I think most people respect the hustle. Yeah. I think anybody who's annoyed by that, they're
probably gone by now.
Well, that, but I don't think that I don't think anybody who hustles like you do or like I do or anybody does. And I say hustle not in like a shady kind of word. I mean works hard for it.
A little bit column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah, I mean you do really play the cat thing a lot, but no, it's but. No, I think...
Says the guy with a fox in the background. Sorry.
Yeah, listen. It's not a cat. It's a fox.
That's true.
You leave Todd alone.
Yeah. But no, I appreciate it. Those are very kind words. I'm not sure how our situation would work if we're the sons of the 7 people, because you're in my circle and I'm in your circle. We might be brothers at this point. I don't know how it works.
I think so, yeah. Something like that. There's an algebraic equation. We'll get back to you with the math later.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. But in the short term, is there anything that we can have to look out for from your end?
I'm at the point where I not so secretly put out a call on my Twitter that people could follow my YouTube channel, which has no videos on it. Mm-hmm. So that's probably a good tip off to where my 2019 thoughts are. I want to figure it out. I want to follow in the footsteps where you're going and where others have gone before us that are good at reaching an audience and inspiring them in their way.
Yeah.
You want to do in-depth interviews with industry people and that kind of thing. That's not where I want to go.
No.
I want to, figure out a way to inspire in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think, I think you're doing your thing to inspire people the way you can, and I want to do it the way I can. And I think that, those of us, probably most of the people listening to you, they all contribute in their way too. And I think that's just the way you make the world a better place. Yeah. One action at a time.
Yeah, and I'm glad we still get to work together on this kind of stuff because we bounce off each other pretty well with both our plans and goals, at least. But that's why I wanted to have you on the show in June. I have to say this again. This is when I invited Steven for the first time, and I liked when I asked. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. I was like, okay, who you want to see in 2019 on the show? And a lot of people mentioned your name, and I was like, they have no idea. NDA that I can't talk about this yet.
I know. It was my pleasure. I did want to do Hashcat, and those of you who are listening, if you're famous or you know famous people, tell them to come on Hashcat. Yeah. They got to be more famous than me, which is like just about anybody. So, you
never know.
No, but seriously, I think I like your show. I think it's a good, honest show. But the thing I like the most about your show is you're openly growing. Like you're showing your growing pains, and like you have like. Your office is just like a random corner of the house. Like you're not even trying to pretend it's anything else.
No. Like I'm not one of those guys with a green screen and like a fox in the background and like a fancy.
Yeah, those guys are horrible.
Exactly. I have like a cool painting that my kid made for me. That's the stuff I have. Yeah, maybe we'll see. Now grow like I am. Like it was you that told me like you have to bleed on the page to keep things interesting, and that's how I approach most of the things. Like when I try to do game dev for a couple of weeks, I like to share that. Project Elsa, for crying out loud, is like bleeding on every page because everybody can see how terrible that started. But I think we're getting somewhere after almost a full year. But it's fun. It's that's how I do. The show continues to grow.
Practicing that crap. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's really all about.
And that's why every episode is the best episode. I'm just not allowed to look at old episodes because then I will cringe my face off. But
that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. So I always end the show, Steven, on a little segment I call Podcast and Shill, and you've been shilling for yourself all night. But I appreciate that. Where can we find you if we want to know more about Steven Spohn?
You can find me the easiest on Twitter, Steven with a V, Spohn, Spohn. Pretty much if you look on Woot's timeline, you'll see me making fun of him at least once a day for something.
All the time, every opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. And on Twitch, I go by the moniker Steve in Spawn, Spawn. My buddy came up with a great acronym from my name that I literally went, why have I never thought about that? Yeah. A spawn, like a spawning in a video game. Damn it. Yeah. See? Yeah. That comedy thing again.
Yeah, there it is.
And you can find me SteveSpawn.com.
Yeah. Now I will put the links in the description. So if you have not seen Steven at the Game Awards in the segment, I definitely recommend checking that out as well. Any old stuff that's out there that we should check out? Like I know you have a couple of articles that are shaking the world. Anything you want to put in the spotlight there?
The proudest thing I have actually is an article over on Chuck Wendig, the author of Star Wars. He has a blog called Terrible Minds, and I did a piece for him called "I Am Not Your Plot Device."
I love that one. Yeah.
And it was one of the ones I was more proud of. And basically, I just talked about how the world sees people with disabilities as a deliverance device to talk about inspiration and using people in that way. Yeah. And that's something that none of us want to do. None of us want to be used. None of us want to be thought of that way. And the entire article, you can Google it. I'm Not Your Plot Device. It's basically the story of how people with disabilities are just humans like anyone else. And we simply want to chase love and happiness just like everyone else does.
Yeah. I know I'm closing and I'm going to be super professional and bring up a whole new thread. But I saw a thing that you posted, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's a movie coming up. I think it's with Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston that you commented on that it looks good. Yeah. Is it, what's the name of that movie? Do you remember?
don't remember the title off the top of my head, actually.
I'm gonna very professionally look it up on my phone live on air.
Good.
But why does I'm gonna fill in the audience there what that movie's called. Why does that look better than what you've seen so far?
Well, the great thing about this movie coming up is it is a Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart movie that is about a situation where there is a quadriplegic character played by Bryan who is helped by Kevin Hart as a personal assistant. Mm-hmm. And all people with disabilities have personal assistants. Some of us call them PCAs or nurses or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But the movie is all about him being an angry, sarcastic person that is famous and hates being famous, but is famous, and he is just trying to live his life, and people won't let him. And Kevin Hart comes in not with oh, you're so special, you're going to change the world, and, don't murder yourself because that would be horrible. He's like, just coming in as a wisecracking street guy going, whatever, dude, just let me do shit. Yeah. And... that's what I really respect because that's what people in my situation really do. Yeah.
Did they get back at you when you were commenting on the movie at all? Or was it just...
Did Kevin Hart tweet me? No, Kevin Hart did not tweet.
No. Well, that's why he's no longer hosting the Oscars, because he ignored you. Yeah. The movie's called The Upside, by the way, if you're interested.
The Upside, right. Yeah.
In watching it. It looked good to me. I always... When I see something, I'm like, I'm going to run my thoughts by Steven to see if I really think this is good or not. Because, honestly, like, I should not have a very solid opinion on these things when I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good movie, because sometimes I see a movie I'm like, oh, that was so good, and then I hear you talk about it, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, that's terrible. I hate this movie. No, it's not really something. I still like the movie, but it's interesting. Like, I always appreciate your input, and I always appreciate it when you make fun of me online all the time.
There's just a different flavor between this movie and most of them. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to mention the name of the movie, but there's one that's starring the mother of dragons, who she basically inspired the "I am not your plot device" post, because the entire movie is just she's trying to talk the sad disabled person out of doing something horrifying. Because, he's disabled and he's sad and he can't imagine living life as someone who's disabled, because the thought of living as a quadriplegic person is just so horrifying that you would rather do something unspeakable. Yeah. Even when somebody is telling you to your face, I love you, don't do this. Yeah. And that's just, that to me, it was such a sham of an idea. Yeah. And the worst part about it was written by an able-bodied person who has no experience with that whatsoever.
No, that was by far the worst Terminator movie I've ever seen.
It was horrifying. Yeah. You really want your Dynavox person to be better.
No, it's bad.
Yeah. No, Cyberdyne, come on.
No, but I'm very curious about the movie. I'm gonna see it, and I'll probably be thinking about you, as I do all the time, because you dressed up for me, and you made me laugh when you sent me that stupid Selena Gomez video. I was in the kitchen. I'm like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, check the timeline because it was hilarious. You funny man.
Hey, he told me I needed to dress up, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go look good for you.
And then he sent me like a sensual Selena Gomez video. Gonna be good for you. Wear my tight dress.
I put on my clothes real skin tight.
Yeah, 14K. We're only filming in 1080p though. Sorry about that, buddy.
I literally went for the joke there of reading out the lyrics of the song, and then I realized I only know one long line from the entire thing.
Hey man, at least you knew the song. I've never seen it before, because I'm terrible when it comes to music, especially popular music. But that's
it's like 6 years old now, modern, whatever.
That's why I have no idea. Is she still with Justin Bieber?
That's how modern is. You're like, it was within this century, so.
I listen to whatever Alexa or Siri throws at me when I say play nice tunes. I can't say her name, otherwise she's gonna start talking to me all of a sudden. But Steven, it was an absolute delight to finally have you on, because we don't get to talk face to face as much as I would like. But that's because borders and countries and travel and all that stuff.
And trying to be friends with anybody after the age of 30 is a nightmare.
Yeah, it is. Like I say, I don't talk to you much, but I moved, like everybody knows, I moved from one country to another, and I talk to you probably more often than some of my friends that I've known my entire life. But it's I'm glad I made some new friendships in this whole industry business, because they're all very very special, and annoying on Twitter sometimes. But I love them anyway, Steven. You're the best.
I appreciate that. No, I enjoy our conversations. I do think it's interesting though. You always try to talk about how people need to get out there and make more friends, and then you realize, oh, if I was mad at my best friend, they might not know for 2 weeks because that's how often we talk.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's true. But okay, so
don't grow up, kids. I think is the lesson.
Yeah. How much money do you make when you sell a book? Because we can just slide in a book pitch as well if it's still out for sale.
$30 billion.
Okay. So I'm gonna buy 2, and then you're gonna buy me some macaroni donuts. That's what we're gonna
have. Deal.
Yeah. I looked at the menu and it's no longer there, Steven. I have very bad news.
What?
Yeah, I know they took it off the menu because probably
we need to burn Canada down.
We're the only ones that ever bought those things, I think. So if you're still listening to this ramble at the end, which is what I'm known for now, to not being able to close the show, I am the Hashtagonist, and you can find me online on Twitter and on Patreon under the Hashtagonist and all the things. And every week I have cool guests like Steven and with a mediocre host like myself, but we're making the show anyway. So thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll see you again next week, and have a good night.